Hey guys, Aaron Cybertron Zeng here, and today I am bringing you the top 8 set I had against James Baek at the Brooklyn Premier Challenge last weekend. If you have not seen the first 6 rounds of Swiss already, definitely check them out, they are in the description below. Anyway, after finishing Swiss with a 5-1 record, I was the 3rd seed, moving on to the top 8, and James was my very first opponent. Of course, in Top Cut, you play best of 3 as opposed to best of 1, so it's a lot more dynamic, and thanks to your feedback, I realized that it's probably better to actually combine all the games, so you'll be seeing a full set in this video as opposed to me separating all of it, which is pretty exciting. I hope you guys enjoyed this video for sure. Anyway, as I mentioned, James was my opponent. James actually competed at Worlds in 2014 and 2015. He also runs a YouTube channel, so check him out if you're interested in more VGC 2016 content. We actually played in the finals of the very first Premier Challenge last season at Brooklyn as well, so it's kind of fun to get a rematch against him, but in the top 8. We've also run into each other a fair amount on Battle Spar or whatnot, so I was excited for this game. James is obviously a Worlds caliber player, and I figured that this would be a pretty exciting set. In team preview, I saw that James's team was Kangaskhan, Salamence, Cresselia, Kyogre, Ho-Oh, and Ferrothorn. My team, of course, was Kangaskhan, Palkia, Groudon, Landorus, Amoonguss, and Cresselia. So, a bunch of things I noticed on his side. First of all, he had Cresselia on Kyogre, so he very well may be carrying Trick Room. Salamence here could potentially Tailwind, as can Ho-Oh. Not sure if they do carry it, but something to keep in the back of my mind. 2 Megas with Kangaskhan and Salamence, and Ferrothorn, which can be a nuisance to deal with if I don't bring Primal Groudon, but there's really no reason not to bring Groudon in this matchup. I figured that Kangaskhan Palkia was by far my safest lead matchup, since Kangaskhan Landorus is too weak to Salamence, and Kangaskhan Groudon, can just get shut down by Kyogre. There's really no reason not to lead Kangaskhan here. I think Fake Out support is just huge, and Double Edge, does immense damage to his entire team. And Palkia here is really bulky, so can survive attacks. Now in game 1, I really saw no reason to bring Landorus or Amoonguss, and I figured, Cresselia and Amoonguss, and I figured that if things went really wrong here, and I figured, okay, maybe I need to tech in Cresselia to put the Weather War into my favor or set up Trick Room, then I could see myself bringing it. Amoonguss, though, not much reason to bring it when he has Salamence, Ho-Oh, Cresselia, and Ferrothorn, all which are really annoying Pokemon to deal with, so I figured, I'm probably just not going to bring Amoonguss at all in this matchup, but I could see myself bringing Cresselia. However, given that this is game 1 in a best of 3, I'm going to play as safely as possible and just get as much information out as I can. So, without further ado, let's get started with the very first game in the best of 3. If you enjoyed this video and you enjoy this best of 3 commentary, please let me know by leaving a like on the video and giving me any feedback, suggestions, or comments. Would really appreciate it, since this is my first time doing something like this. So he leads with Cresselia and Salamence, as I lead with Kangaskhan and Palkia, which is a decent lead matchup. I do have Fake Out pressure immediately from Kangaskhan, but what I'm fearing right now is for him to actually switch Salamence out into Ferrothorn and Trick Room. I know that's a pretty specific play that he could make, but if he does go for that, then I'll be in a really bad position, since then Kangaskhan's just threatened by the Ferrothorn. So I decided he's probably going to protect or switch out Salamence this play, this first turn, since Fake Out Spatial Ren's so obvious onto it, so I actually go for the Fake Out Spatial Ren play onto Cresselia. However, as he decides to Mega Evolve, I figure that means he's going to go for an attack, and lo and behold, he doesn't switch out or protect, so I know that I'm already in some trouble. If I just Fake Out Spatial Rented Salamence, I would have eliminated a huge threat, and Cresselia wouldn't have been able to do very much. You could have set up Trick Room or Skill Swap, but none of those really do too much, especially against my team, which is also Trick Room based. So he goes for the Hyper Voice there, which does just under 50% to both of my Pokemon. I do get the Fake Out on Spatial Ren play, but obviously this turn was in James's favor. So this next turn I figure, okay, I really want the knockout onto Salamence, I just want to get it out of the way, and if I switch into Landorus, then his Double Edge or his Draco Meteor won't knock out my Palkia. So I know it's a relatively safe play. He could have gone for a Helping Hand Draco Meteor, I figured, but fortunately enough he didn't, as he does just launch the Draco Meteor onto the Palkia slot. But I do have the Hobbenberry here, so I know I should be able to survive this given how bulky Palkia is, and I do hang on with 21 HP. So as long as I connect with Spatial Ren here, at least we'll be able to bring things back into my favor. However, I still don't know whether he's going to go for the Ice Beam or another play onto the Landorus slot. Spatial Ren here, however, does fortunately connect with the Salamence, and I am able to pick up the one-hit KO. So, pretty big turn for me here. At least I do eliminate the biggest threat, especially to the Kangaskhan. He actually doesn't go for a Trick Room or a Ice Beam, going for the Skill Swap with Cresselia, so he gets rid of my Intimidate, and instead actually gets a Intimidate back onto me. This is actually kind of a big deal, because if he didn't get that Intimidate, the next turn I could have gone for the U-turn and the Spatial Ren play to potentially pick up a knockout onto Cresselia, but now that my attack is reduced, that's not an option. So, at this point, this is pretty huge, because I don't know who's faster between Cresselia and Kyogre. I also don't know who faster between my Groudon and the 2 Pokemon he has here. So if Cresselia outspeeds Primal Kyogre here, what he could do is he could actually just skill swap and go for a water type attack to pick up a double knockout here. And if I switch into Groudon, and I don't want that to be the case. So I figure, okay, worst case I lose both my Kangaskhan, which I'm going to U-turn into here, and my Palkia, then I could potentially seal up the game with Landorus and my Groudon since I have the Weather War at least in my favor. So I figured that's the worst case scenario, and if he does anything else, then I'll be able to hang on with Kangaskhan and or Palkia. So, go for the Spatial Rent here onto Kyogre. I actually miss, which really stinks, but fortunately enough, he doesn't go for something like a Water Spout. Goes for the Ice Beam onto Kangaskhan, also gets a crit there, so really unfortunate turn for me there, as I really don't get anything out of it, and I take a lot of damage. He does reveal the skill swap, but it's important to note that Kyogre outspeeds Cresselia, which is really important information. So, had I switched into Groudon there, it still actually would have been a great play on his end, but fortunately enough, that was what I was anticipating. Didn't give it to him, and now, you know, I should be able to have the Weather War into my favor. So this next turn, I actually decide to double up on Cresselia, knowing how, low HP it is. The double target should be able to pick up a knockout onto it, and if he switches out into anything else, the Ho-Oh, which was I was predicting, then I'll be able to do a ton of damage, if not pick up a knockout, especially with high crit chances on Palkia and Kangaskhan getting 2 attacks off. So, do go for the double edge here. You can see how bulky Ho-Oh is. Of course, I am intimidated since he went for the skill swap, but still takes that with over 50%. So, I figure Spatial Rent here is probably not going to pick up a knockout unless I get a crit. Even if it doesn't get a knockout, I feel like I have enough resources in the late game to win the game. But Spatial Rent here does connect with Ho-Oh, and it does actually get a critical hit. So, a little bit lucky there. It kind of makes up for me missing Spatial Rent on Palkia or Kyogre earlier and him critting the Ice Beam. He does go for the Origin Pulse here, most likely predicting a Landorus switch in or just covering all his options. So a little bit risky since it is only 85 accuracy, but does connect with my Palkia and does pick up the knockout. But I know that this game should be in my favor at this point since I've got Groudon and Landorus out. Now, one thing important to note that I actually didn't catch during the battle is that he has no way to get the rain up anymore because he doesn't have Primordial C on Kyogre or Cresselia, as he skill swapped it earlier and he switched out. This was something that I had neglected to remember, or I just forgot during the moment, so at this point my fear is that he can still go for the skill swap play and win with Kyogre. So my thought process was, okay, I'm just going to deny him from the skill swap by going for the Protect and Explosion play, since I know that's guaranteed to pick up a knockout onto Cresselia. Now, in retrospect, there are a bunch of things wrong with this play. First of all, I know his Kyogre outspeeds his Cresselia, so I figured his Cresselia should probably be min speed. As a result, Groudon should actually be able to outspeed it. But fortunately enough, he doesn't Protect with this Kyogre, which means the game is already won in my favor, since even if he outspeeds me consistently with Kyogre, I'll have the extra damage output. So, Protect Explosion ends up working out. You know, it would have been a fine play regardless, but I think I could have played maybe a little bit safer there, knowing that I had Assault Vest on Landorus and knowing like he couldn't get the Heavy Rain back up at any point in this match. So, kind of overextended on my thought process there, but I figured even if Kyogre protects here, I should be able to win the one-on-one if he's min-speed Kyogre here. So, Earth Power comes out, and I know that because of the explosion damage, another one will be able to pick up the knockout after the first one. So, I do end up winning game 1 in a 1-1 fashion, a really close game, honestly, pretty back and forth. Momentum was definitely in his favor after the first turn, but I was able to make, you know, the decent play of picking up the knockout into Salamence, and then just getting more damage out and winning the Weather War in my favor. But, you know, at the time, I actually didn't realize that the last turn was slightly a blunder, but I was fine. I did reveal Explosion onto Landorus, and of course, I was running Assault Vest Landorus, so I knew that's something he would probably consider going into the next matches. However, as I mentioned, there was really no reason to bring Amoonguss or Cresselia in the first game, and you know, from game 1, I didn't indicate anything that told me, okay, I really need to adjust my strategy going into the future games. You know, there are best of 3 sets where you have a strategy and it works out so well that there's no reason to really adjust, and I figured my 4 Pokemon were already consistent enough at that point to keep things around, so I didn't really want to switch things up. Even if he, you know, change things up by bringing Kangaskhan or Ferrothorn, my 4 still dealt with his 6 well enough, so I decided to go with the very same 4 Pokemon, and I didn't know what adjustments James would make, but I got a lot of important information from that game 1, knowing Salamence's full moveset, knowing Cresselia has Skill Swap and Helping Hand, Kyogre having Ice Beam and Origin Pulse, etc. Didn't get to see very much out of the Ho-Oh, unfortunately, but, you know, it is what it is, so we're going to get into this second game. Of course, being a best of 3, winning the game 1 is always really great. You know, you feel pretty confident, and you know you only have to win 1 more of the next 2, but at the same time, you'd really like to just not mess up, and you still want to play as perfectly as possible. So, game 2, James and I end up leading with the very same leads as we did with game 1. I think both of us thought that it was a good lead for either of us and we could play around it. So, you know, the mistake I made in game 1 was really fearing the Ferrothorn, but I figure he probably is not going to bring in Ferrothorn. Even if he were to bring in Ferrothorn, I realized that I could actually even switch out into my Primal Groudon. So what I do this time is just fake out Cresselia and Spatial Rend the Salamence. Fake out onto Cresselia just to ensure that that doesn't do anything support-wise. And I know Salamence here could get an attack off, but let's say he goes for the Hyper Voice and I can just get the knockout. So Palkia actually puts on more pressure here. He does make the good play of going for the Protect and going for not Mega Evolving there to conserve the Intimidate potentially for the future. So this next turn he is going to Mega Evolve, and I'm not sure what he's going for here. I decided to just go for as much damage as possible, going for the Double Edge and the Spatial Rend. He actually goes for the Helping Hand play onto Salamence, which I was pretty scared of. I didn't think my Palkia would be able to survive this, but Palkia is really bulky. I do invest in a lot of bulk into this one, so I actually managed to take the Helping Hand Double Edge, fortunately, with just 20 HP, get the free Double Edge off against Cresselia, actually getting a critical hit there on the second hit, so pretty fortunate there because now he is in KO range. And Palkia here also connects with the Spatial Rend, so I get the knockout onto Salamence. So once again, Salamence, you know, does a decent amount of work, but I'm more content this time because I think this is actually even better than how the first game played out here. Palkia, of course, pretty low at 20 HP, but I'm not going to complain here. James brings in the Ho-Oh, which is a little bit of an adjustment since last time the first legendary we saw his end was the Kyogre. So his Cresselia actually switches out this turn, and just like the last game, I'm going to make the same play of going for the double target onto it, knowing that he's either going to get knocked out, so I can, you know, bring it into my favor with the Weather War, or he's going to switch out and whatever's coming in is going to take a ton of damage. That's kind of the nice play you can make when you know that Cresselia doesn't carry Protect, and it's actually one of the reasons why we saw so many Protect Cresselia at the World Championships in 2015, specifically for the reason of double targets, Thunders as well. So he doesn't protect with his Ho-Oh, not much of a reason to, but Kangaskhan outspeeds and just does get the double edge off. But you can see how bulky both his Pokemon are. Yeah, neither of them take, you know, 50% from double edge, and that's because of the Intimidate. So Ho-Oh here actually goes for the Brave Bird. I'm not sure whom he's targeting, but I figure regardless of who he targets, you know, if he targets the Palkia, then Kangaskhan sticks around and has even more offensive pressure, then I can just double edge Rock Slide with my Landers. But he does make the good play of Brave Birding onto the Kangaskhan, and Ho-Oh is really bulky, but also has the base 130 attack there, so it does a ton of damage. I do get the Spatial Rend off here onto Kyogre, but he hangs on with a little bit of HP, and I'm actually not sure if that's enough for Rock Slide to knock out, which is pretty scary. So I bring in my Landers here, and I figured this next turn, he's either going to double protect or he's going to switch out. So in order to respond to that, I actually switch out to my Groudon and go straight for the Rock Slide. I figure even if he stays in with both and maybe goes for attack, then Rock Slide just knocks out Ho-Oh and could potentially knock out Kyogre. Flinch chance is also in my favor, and he has to go for the Ice Beam and attack and knock it out through the Assault Vest. By switching into Groudon, I put on more offensive pressure since now I can just go for spread attacks with both Rock Slide and Eruption, whereas Palkia is outsped by the Ho-Oh. But he does end up making the double protect play, which I figured was a potential play. Also makes sense because I did have the explosion potential onto Landers. If I went for that and he just attacked, then I actually would have just won the game. But instead I make the safer play this time, not going for the explosion, just going for the Rock Slide. So this next time I'm a little bit surprised because I thought he'd switch out the Kyogre. Instead he switches out the Ho-Oh, which ensures victory for me. Since I didn't want to risk the miss, I actually go for the U-turn play onto Kyogre. This play kind of works out for a bunch of reasons, because if he switches out into Crest, then I also pick up the knockout. Ho-Oh being at -1 can Brave Bird or Sacred Fire me, but I know that by U-turning switch out into my Palkia, and he can pick up a knockout there, and then I'll get an Eruption off, and then I can bring in Landorus once again, and that should be enough to seal up the game. So I felt pretty confident about my chances at the late game. I don't think James really could have done anything. He had to hope for kind of a mistake on my end, but wasn't going to give it to him. I made the safest plays possible by picking up the knockout onto Kyogre and onto the Cresselia. His Ho is going to come back in, but at this point with a Primal Groudon and the Landers in the back, I know there's really nothing he can do. Ho is one of those Pokemon that can stall out a match though because of its ability to heal back and get Sacred Fire burns off, so he does go for the Sacred Fire here, maybe hoping for the Landers switch in. Not going to give that to him, no reason to, because I know the full HP Landers is enough to deal with it. I don't really want to give James an opportunity to come back into this one. So, go for the Flamethrower play, I do bring in the Landers, and this is still a little bit scary. I could go for the Rock Slide, but if I miss and he burns Sacred Fire, and he has Recovered, then I could actually potentially lose this game. He goes for the Protect play, which is smart, because one play I could have made was actually going for Explosion, which is 100% accurate, but if I exploded there, I actually would have just lost. So, I decided I'm just going to suck it up and bite the Rock Slide accuracy, you know, because he still has to KO me, or get a burn, and I know that, you know, the RNG really has to be in his favor there, even if I miss Rock Slide, but that's not the case. I do connect with my Rock Slide with Landorus, and I do end up winning the set 2-0. So, very tense set against James. Both of us went with the same 4 Pokemon both times, but, you know, the games obviously played out a little bit differently since Game 1 was dictated more by the Primal matchup with Kyogre. Game 2 was him putting on more pressure with Ho-Oh. But I think it was just really good for me to eliminate Salamence right from the start, and Landorus and Groudon were really able to put in a lot of work against his back 2. I think that James maybe could have done something else if he brought in Kangaskhan as opposed to Salamence, and that definitely would have made the matchup a little bit more interesting since Kangaskhan is pretty annoying to deal with in general. I do have Intimidate, and of course do have Low Kick, but if he's max speed, you know, get into a bunch of mind games there. The Ferrothorn here really didn't offer too much for him. He could have did something with it if he had the right mind games, but I think Ferrothorn was just a pretty risky Pokemon to bring into this matchup. So I do end up winning against James 2-0, which means I do get a spot into the top 4. So James was eliminated, and I do move on to the top 4, and I'll be bringing that set for you guys tomorrow. So hope you guys enjoyed the set. I think it's pretty interesting, especially because I get to talk a little bit in terms of adjustments and how you play in a best of 3 as opposed to how you play in a best of 1 setting. But it's pretty nice to win my first official best of 3 set in VGC 2016, and I was definitely content with that. But James was an excellent opponent. RNG was in my favor in a bunch of times. I think game 1, you know, we both got a little bit lucky. Me missing Spatial Rend and him critting Ice Beam, but then I got the crit onto Ho-Oh, which probably mattered more. Game 2, I was able to get the, I think, fake out crit or the double edge crit onto Cresselia to bring it down into KO range, which also helped me out. So got pretty fortunate both games. I don't think I really needed it. I feel like I played well enough that I was accounting for all the RNG that could go against me, but it was just, you know, icing on top and ended up working out. But James was a fantastic player, and I really enjoyed his team, especially the Ho-Oh, although I wish I could have seen a little bit more of it. So yeah, that's going to be it for this best of 3 set, guys. I really hope you enjoyed it. Please, please, please do leave a like and give me any suggestions or feedback for this kind of content if you do. And go check out James if you don't know him already, because he makes some cool 2016 content as well. It's going to be it for this video, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed. Leave a like always, and I'll see you guys next time. Alright, peace.